Hello, welcome back to What Now on the threshold of life, death, and grief. And here we are in the studio with my friends and colleagues.
David Kennedy.
And Red Keating.
I'm Julie Brown. And it's just the three of us, guys, in this episode. And this is kind of an episode 2.0. Last year, we had the idea to do a whole episode that was called The Written Word. If you haven't heard it, you might want to have a look back. And in that episode, each of us chose a few passages, songs, poems, writings that have guided us in our work, that we go back to, that we share with clients and people in our life. We received some really positive feedback from that episode, and some of what we shared really connected with people. And we all felt like we had a lot more to share. So we thought we would do another episode. So that's what brings us together in this episode. So thanks for listening. And I think we'll jump in with something from you, David.
Thanks, Julie. I think the first one I'd like to share is relatively new with me. Although the poet, I have read much of her stuff, Rosemary Tromer, and she's a wonderful poet living in Colorado and has written numbers, and you're going to read some of her work later, Julie, I think so.
Yeah, we just discovered we both brought poetry by her without even talking or planning that ahead of time.
And this is one, as I say, that was fairly new to me, and I have already found it really helpful. I've shared it with a couple of people that I'm working with, and also I shared it at the Candlelight Memorial this year, because I think it speaks to something that we've actually done a podcast on, and that is around how does one find hope, and how do we move in our grief beyond that initial place. So this is called Hope. Hope has holes in its pockets. It leaves little crumb trails so that we, when anxious, can follow it. Hope's secret? It doesn't know the destination. It only knows that all roads begin with one foot in front of the other.
Oh, I like the simplicity of that. And the
imagery of that,
Hansel and Gretel nature.
Just that the idea that hope leaves these crumb trails that allow us to pick them up little bits at a time.
And what I love about that poem is the crumb trails. It's small, crumbs. They're minute. They're not always obvious, because sometimes I think in our effort to be supportive, we grasp for hope, or we grasp for things that maybe doesn't feel very hopeful or very supportive for people. So I like the idea that sometimes hope reveals itself in really small little ways. Lovely.
And that it falls through a flaw. If you didn't have a hole in your pocket, that sense of things don't have to be perfect, right? And in fact, maybe a flaw here or there, or something that might be an annoyance, an inconvenience, something that people might think needs to be fixed, becomes the conduit, or the passageway, the threshold through which hope finds its way.
Yeah, I never thought of that, but that's true. I like that. Yeah. Good.
Thinking deep tonight, David. Thinking deep. Yep.
All right, over to you, Red.
Well, now that you read such a short one, I was going to start off with the lyric, but I think I'm going to read a short one, too. I kind of like the idea of a short one. This is by Canadian poet Alden Nowlin. I was introduced to him when I was in high school, had to do a project on him. He died relatively young, and quite a few of his poems speak to being ill and dying and what comes next. I loved one image that he used, and I don't have the poem with me because I couldn't find it, but he's writing to his wife. And he says, when you're sitting in the kitchen, if I knock that pencil off the table, would you know it was me? And I thought, what a fantastic image. But this poem I've chosen tonight is called This Is What I Wanted to Sign Off With. You know what I am like when I'm sick? I'd sooner curse than cry. And people don't often know what they're saying in the end. Or I could die in my sleep. So I'll say it now. Here it is. Don't pay attention if I don't get it right when it's for real. Blame that on terror and pain or the stuff they're shooting through my veins. This is what I wanted to sign off with. Bend closer. Listen. I love you.
Wow.
I love it. I haven't heard it before.
Yeah, he's powerful.
And I love that it speaks to that sometimes we overassign meaning, or we get really stuck on some of the things people say and do in their days in death, and that can complicate grief. And that's sometimes the work that we're doing with people, right, is coming down to these essential truths. That all of that sometimes can be the noise, and the noise of dying and the medical field and symptoms and medications. But beneath all of that, it's kind of like the waves. Beneath the waves down at the ocean floor there's this truth, this steadiness.
I read it the way I read it on purpose, because what strikes me about this poem is I was talking with folks, and I said, when you've got cancer and it's not going well and the treatments aren't working and now you're palliative, the world just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it kind of closes in. And I like the way this poem closes in at the end. He says, bend here, come closer, listen. Because when it comes right down to it, it only is about these three words. It's about the love I give, the love I receive in a quiet, small moment. And like you said, Julie, that's what's important. All the other stuff just washes away.
Yeah.
Bend closer.
Yeah.
Listen. I love you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I like the fact that he also says, I'd rather curse than cry.
Can you relate?
Because sometimes when I'm sick, I'm miserable, And so
Yeah.
even inside the beauty, there's the admission that sometimes, this really sucks. And there's terror and pain. But that doesn't erase the fact that
I love you.
I love you. Come close. Listen. It's small. It's quiet. But it's everything.
And just that need for us as grievers to reorient to that truth over and over again, especially when we're getting stuck on the cursing and the pain and all of that, that can really increase our suffering and our grief. Thank you. Yeah, I'm very touched by that one.
These two short poems have had really big impacts.
Yeah.
Well, I have one that's also fairly short. So this is one by Mark Nepo. One of the things the pandemic did was allow you to have access to people who came online who haven't really done much online. And really early in the pandemic, I got this email, something I subscribed to, that Mark Nepo was doing a workshop that day. And so I signed up for it. It was a Saturday afternoon on Zoom. And it was 2 hours, and like 38 people or 35 people joined. So it was a really small group. And Mark just read his poetry and talked about his poetry from his home. So that felt like such a gift, really. And so here's one of his poems that's always stayed with me. So it's called Adrift. Everything is beautiful, and I am so sad. This is how the heart makes a duet of wonder and grief. The light spraying through the lace of the fern is as delicate as the fibers of memory forming their web around the knot in my throat. The breeze makes the birds move from branch to branch as this ache makes me look for those I've lost in the next room, in the next song, in the laugh of the next stranger. In the very center, under it all, what we have that no one can take away, and all that we've lost face each other. It is there that I'm adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. I am so sad, and everything is beautiful.
Well, I really love that idea of duet, and it's not one or the other.
That's right.
It's that learning to live with them both present. Wow. What a great poem.
I actually quote that poem often with some of my clients in grief. This idea of the duet, the duality, that they can be experiencing something that is beautiful, that moves them, that maybe is lovely or fun or exciting in their life, and yet they're so sad. And so there it all sits. Or sometimes it's like the beauty exists also within their grief, right? The beauty of the depth of the love or the connection or the relationship or the memory, and that these two things can come up all at the same time. It's kind of like, it's so who we are as humans. We want to believe that we think and feel more in binaries. I'm either this or that, but it's both. Everything is beautiful, and I am so sad.
Yeah, what a great line.
And he did a really good job at describing how the room he's sitting in is beautiful. You know, the sun going through the ferns and with the shadows like lace, you know, and you can, it paints a picture. And you can be the saddest person in a crowd, right? You can be surrounded by beauty and still not feel it, right? And that duality is really strong. I sort of, what's jumped out at me was being punctured by holiness.
I know. Can I read that?
Surely.
It is there that I am adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything.
Yeah.
Love that.
Like one would think holiness and sacred and sort of faith or belief that you wouldn't find yourself adrift in that environment, right? But not only are you adrift, you are punctured, which is a painful thing to be to be punctured.
And even the name
Yeah.
of the poem, Adrift.
Yeah.
Isn't that how we often feel in grief? Trying to find our center, our anchor.
And so even the sacredness, the beauty of sacredness doesn't eliminate pain,
Right.
doesn't eliminate suffering. It hopefully helps us bear our suffering, but it doesn't eliminate it. It gives us a way to carry through it, but it doesn't take it away.
And there is beauty in that, too, that we don't often take time. I know I just was with a person just the other day, and they were talking about how their friends were encouraging them to go and try and find some pill to take away this grief, you know, and we just shared that, that living in that, and that would be a great line that I would love to share with them, that idea of being punctured by it, because there's the duality, right?
That's right.
Well, I have a little longer one. So, and this is thanks to you, Red, that you, when we first did this in the first go around, you were pretty adamant about wanting to bring some music into this.
Yes. And I listened back to the episode. I only contributed two Peter Gabriel tunes.
Two Peter Gabriel tunes. And the idea that, and it's true. I mean, the lyrics of songs and are beautiful poetry too. And this is one that I came across a number of years ago. And the song was actually written by Eric Bogle. And it was written for the mothers of children who were killed in a school shooting in Scotland, which was really unusual. And so what he did was he took one of the stories of one of the mothers, the way that she dealt with her grief of her child, and he put it in a way of looking at the stars through music. And so at the end of each day, this mother would go outside after dark and find a point of light, a star, and she would just share her whole entire day with that star. And she believed that the spirit of her child was in that star, and the light from that star shines on her face. And she chose a star because even although these are objects where they died millions, perhaps millions and millions of years ago, we still see their light. They're still burning for us in the heavens. And she believes that one day her light will join with her daughters. But the song is called One Small Star, and I'd sing it for you, but nobody would survive the podcast. So I will just read the lyrics for you. When I need to feel you near me, I stand in this quiet place, the silver light of countless stars falling on my face. Though they all burn so brightly, somehow it comforts me to know that some who burn the brightest died in eternity ago. But your light still shines. It's one small star to guide me. It helps me hold back the dark. Your light still shines in my heart. I'm learning how to live without you, and I never thought I could. And even how to smile again, I never thought I would. And to cherish your heart's memories that can bring you back to life. Some caress me gently, and some cut me like a knife. But your light still shines. It's one small star to guide me. It helps me hold back the dark. Your light's still shining in my heart. And your soul be out there somewhere beyond the infinite day of time. I guess you found some answers now. I'll have to wait for mine. And my light joins with yours one day. We'll shine through time and space, and one day fall on a distant age upon some stranger's face. But your light still shines. It's one small star to guide me, and it helps me hold back the dark. Your light's still shining in my heart. And I love that, and it's so true that many of the people that we have worked with, the star and the light from star just kind of is that point at which they feel they can direct all of that grief and their talk and see and find a connection. But I just thought that was such a beautiful way of presenting this mother's grief and then the whole pieces of, learning to live without you. Thought I never would.
That sounds familiar. I feel like I might have heard that song before.
I used to use it at hospice sometimes in the memorials. I would play that, but I haven't heard it. I haven't heard it played outside of in many places. Yeah,
that image of of what we know to a star to be dead, still casting light. And that talking about carrying the spirit or the soul of that person with you forward into life. I like that idea that the life might have died, but the light and the influence and the energy or the soul of that life hasn't gone out.
Right. It continues.
That it continues.
Yeah.
And it can cross great distances. Or it can live right there in your heart. Yeah. I like that, being able to sort of go well beyond what we feel we're capable of or what we feel we can even comprehend or understand in terms of light, in terms of energy and soul.
Thank you. Can I follow that one up? Because one of the poems that I had picked actually also speaks to stars, and it's one by Rosemary Traumer. Is that what we say? And it's from one of her most recent books called All the Honey. And the title is Watching My Friend Pretend Her Heart Isn't Breaking. On Earth, just a teaspoon of neutron star would weigh 6 billion tons. 6 billion tons is equivalent to the weight of every animal on Earth, including insects, times 3. 6 billion tons sounds impossible until I consider how it is to swallow grief. Just one teaspoon, and one may as well have consumed a neutron star. How dense it is, how it carries inside it the memory of collapse. How difficult it is to move then. How impossible to believe anything could ever lift that weight. There are many reasons to treat each other with great tenderness. One is the sheer miracle we are here together on a planet surrounded by dying stars. One is we cannot see what anyone else has swallowed.
I love the idea of grief having density.
Yeah.
Because it does.
Because we talk about having weight, but I've never thought about it having density.
Yeah.
You know?
And we hear people say, like, I don't know how I will keep carrying this. I don't know how I will do it, right? And then I love the ending about, one is we cannot see what anyone else has swallowed. And it reminds me of that quote, be kind, for everyone is fighting a great battle or carrying a great burden. And it's just that idea that there's the density, the weight of what people are carrying.
And the universality of it, right? Or the connection that that person's carrying something too. And aren't we all?
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Yeah. And aren't we all carrying loss of some kind often?
Good. Well, two from the stars.
That leads me away from the one I was going to read next to, I think, another short one. But again, this is by Rumi. I placed one foot on the wide plain of death, and some grand immensity sounded on the emptiness. I have felt nothing ever like the wild wonder of that moment. Longing is the core of mystery. Longing itself brings the cure. The only rule is, suffer the pain. Your desire must be disciplined, and what you wanted to happen in time, sacrificed.
What speaks to you about that one, Red?
Oh, I love the idea of putting one foot in the wide plain of death and some ground immensity sounded on the emptiness. That's a wildly odd image for me. But so it starts off wonderfully confusing to me, but I love that. But I do like the idea that your desire must be disciplined, and what you wanted to happen in time, sacrificed. And so that sense of, if we are only holding on to that which we had anticipated or expected and don't live in the reality of what is after someone has died, we will be stuck maybe in that. And so some things like have to be sacrificed. The physical relationship is sacrificed with that person. And we have to acknowledge that, and we have to feel the pain of that. And it's terrible. We hate it, right? But I think because it's negative, we don't see it as something normal and natural that happens in our human development. That we will all go through this, and it's part of life.
To me, it spoke of letting go of the last bit of control.
Yeah.
That we give up our expectations and our goals and we let go of that. And that's kind of that last control piece that we realize, no, I can't keep that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And again, I like that it's short. It's few words, but it paints an incredibly powerful picture.
Well, I have one that has to do with dying rather than the other side of that. And it was actually a poem that my brother gave to me he went to a poetry club for a number of years, and there was a gentleman there. This was one of his poems. His name was Wayne Schlepp, and it was about a personal one about he and his own struggle with his wife dying. And it's called A Prayer for Passing. If it must end, let it be beautiful. And if it is ordained that there is pain or sorrow or the breaking heart, let there as well be peace, a brief moment of it, where the strength we had can come once more to make it a proper passing. And if there must be confusion and sad surprise, as our landscape breaks before us and yields up no longer the sweet scenes of our times, grant peace, that our visions of the past might be gathered again briefly for one final hour to make a gentle passing. And if there must be madness among those colored autumn leaves, and if it must be watered by the wellsprings of resentful past, let there at least be a respite of peace, that the force of obsession wane a little, that the bright and anxious moon give way to general dark, and no searing words mar the mutual love of a quiet passing. And if there must be hours long and empty, empty as the dwelling now where we dwelt together. Give us a moment of peace, that sounds and warm words might come again to the ear and around the heart for that one brief time, to let the end be beautiful. And I love that because of the juxtaposition of the...
We're back to the duet.
Yeah, back to the duet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if this is going to be there, then it's not like I can't make it not be there.
Right. It doesn't have to be all one way, one thing.
Let there be a moment of peace.
Yeah.
Let there be this breaking,
I wish I could remember. You read something last time with a similar feeling of if this, then that, if this, then that. And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, what stood out for me is the term, if it must.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think some people would go, well, why does it have to be that way? You know? And they might rail against it, which may be fine. Maybe that's what they need to do. But they might not get to that place where if it's this way, then maybe I could invite peace in some sort of way or find peace in that process. And I like the repetition of the if it must in that poem.
And the sense that it's not, like, even in that, it's you get a sense that it's not something that he can make happen. It's
control again.
It's real. It's that. I hope. I wish. I'm hopeful. Yeah.
I think that David read this last time, the prayer for courage. Is that the one we're talking about?
I read that one.
I pray for a peaceful death.
Yes.
But if there be no peace, please let me have courage.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was a similar kind of piece to it there.
And I mean, what a great prayer, right? As opposed to praying for control, as opposed of saying, this is what I want, it's if.
Yeah.
If it must. And it allows for all possibilities, the good and the not so good, or the the struggle, the ease and the struggle. So it wouldn't do without me bringing a lyric or a song in from somebody.
We gotta have a song somewhere from Red Keating.
So I've brought in a song by David Sylvian entitled "Let the Happiness In." Again, David, it is hard to read a song when you have the tune in your head, but I will try to do my best. I'm waiting on the empty docks, watching the ships come in. I'm waiting for the agony to stop. Oh, let the happiness in. I'm watching as the gulls all settle down upon the empty vessels, the faded whites of their wedding gowns, the songs of hopelessness and selflessness. The cold December sun, a cold that blisters, the hands of a working man, wasted. I'm waiting on the empty docks, watching the ships roll in. I'm waiting for the agony to stop. Oh, let the happiness in. Listen to the waves against the rocks. I don't know where they've been. I'm waiting for the sky to open up and let the happiness in. Oh, let the happiness in, 'cause it's coming home. Let the happiness in, 'cause it's coming on, calling home. And I like that because it's depressing in one way, but it's also happy. Musically, it's a bit of a dirge until he gets to the end. And let the happiness in, because it's coming, is repeated and repeated. And when it gets to that part, there's a rhythm that's introduced to the song that lifts you right up. But I like it because it's, again, so plain. And you don't know what this guy's agony is, what he swallowed, and the density of whatever it is that he's swallowed, whether it's grief or whatever. And he's sitting there in an everyday scene, watching the ships come in, looking at the seagulls, watching the workers. It's cold. It's December. The waves are coming in. He doesn't know where they've been, but he's sort of sitting there waiting for something to happen and for the sky to turn and open so that the happiness can come in. And I like how it's just so everyday. And, he doesn't know where the water's been, but it's coming. And he doesn't know where he's going, but he's going to come to shore someday, And the other piece I like about it is that the isolation that he must feel and the loneliness sitting there while life goes on around him.
Mm-hmm.
The workers are working, the ships are coming in, the seagulls are doing what they
Life
do, the
keeps
waters.
happening.
And he's somehow out of time or out of sync with all of that. And he's waiting for that moment when it all sort of, it comes back together. Yeah. And it's, I would think if I played that song for most people, they would go, oh my God, this is so depressing. I listen to it and get so much energy from it. And when the little rhythm starts, it lifts you right up. But yeah, there's lots of layers there. I like the idea of the hands of the working man wasted, you know. We do get caught up in the everyday and maybe some things that are important or maybe some things that aren't as important. And when we're not connected to that world in a way, it all looks sometimes like useless. Why are you continuing to live your life and I'm sitting here in so much pain and agony, right? But life goes on. Outside outside your house, outside the window, people are driving their cars. And why are they doing that? Don't they know my pain, you know? And I sit here almost invisibly while life goes by. But I like the hope at the end.
Yeah, I was going to say it's such a common experience for people in that life goes on around them and they're not part of it. But that hope at the end, that's what really, wow, yeah, it's coming.
And he says it's coming home. He was hopeful at one point in his life. He's had hope. He knows hope. And he knows if he sits long enough, right, the sky will open up. If he gives it enough time, if he exists in this world that he doesn't feel a part of or isolated from or lonely in, if
he can sit with it,
if he can sit with it and if he's ready for it when it comes, that can be happiness, that can be laughter, that can be fun and joy again, that he knows it's there. And if he sits here long enough, something will happen. Yeah.
I like that. Do we have we have to hear from John O'Donohue.
Well, I do have one from John O'Donohue. It's not as short because his often
rarely are.
Yes. But it's one that probably all of us know. It's called For One Who Is Exhausted.
Yes.
And it's from his book, Bless the Space Between Us. And I love this one, I'll just say, because I think it speaks to grievers, to caregivers, to those living with illness, to one who is exhausted. And it goes like this. When the rhythm of the heart becomes hectic, time takes on the strain until it breaks. Then all the unattended stress falls in on the mind like an endless increasing weight. The light in the mind becomes dim. Things you could take in your stride before now become laborsome events of will. Weariness invades your spirit. Gravity begins falling inside you, dragging down every bone. The tide you never valued has gone out, and you are marooned on unsure ground. Something within you has closed down, and you cannot push yourself back to life. You have been forced to enter empty time. The desire that drive you has relinquished. There is nothing else to do now but rest and patiently learn to receive the self you have forsaken in the race of days. At first your thinking will darken and sadness take over like listless weather. The flow of unwept tears will frighten you. You have traveled too far over false ground. Now your soul has come to take you back. Take refuge in your senses. Open up to all the small miracles you rush through. Become inclined to watch the way of rain when it falls slow and free. Imitate the habit of twilight, taking time to open the well of color that fostered the brightness of day. Draw alongside the silence of stone until its calmness can claim you. Be excessively gentle with yourself. Stay clear of those vexed in spirit. Learn to linger around someone of ease who feels they have all the time in the world. Gradually, you will return to yourself, having learned a new respect for your here and the joys that dwell far within slow time.
There's so many images in that, isn't
right?
there? That just every
And
time
actually,
I
many
read
images
it,
we've
yeah.
already spoken about.
Yeah. But I love that one, linger around people who have all the time to give, right? It's just, and what a beautiful point for us that, and in grief, I think it's, so many times I hear that, people are telling me I should just get back into busyness and go do something. And yet, there's that just creates more exhaustion. And here to linger with people who have all the time in the world, and that whole image for me is just what a beautiful, beautiful piece.
I love when people create terms for things that we don't have terms for. All through that, I forgot how that ended, but all through that, I'm thinking, oh, isn't time a bitch? just like, that's the problem with it. I'm listening and kind of going, there's time. And if we need time, but that concept of things being divided and things needing to happen at certain times and schedules and all of that we live our lives by. And then he says, hang out with people that know slow time.
Yeah,
right? That know slow time.
And
he says, draw alongside the silence of stone. And then when he says, watch the way of rain when it falls slow and free.
Yeah.
Right?
They don't know time. The stone doesn't know time.
Right.
The stone just is.
Those Irish, they just have a way with words.
We do have a hard time just being. I know.
We do.
I do. I mean, I'm not saying that. It's just hard to sit and be.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we are forced to slow down, or when he says, you've traveled too fast over on solid ground, or however he has said, unsure ground. Mm-hmm. It's that idea that sometimes we hit the wall. And I was thinking about this, when we talk about recovery for our caregivers, or recovery in grief, or recovery when we are adapting to a new way of life when we've been diagnosed. It's sometimes all of a sudden now life forces us to slow down, and we have to learn a new way to be in the world. We have to learn slowness. And that's hard. And as someone who's been and walked down that journey, I know it's like, it feels very counterintuitive for us. So I think there's, he has such a beautiful way in his words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we're about to close out. David, you look like you've got one for closing. Do you?
Well, I have one more that's a little unique. And the reason I like this one is that it brings into the life and death of all of us our connection to the world and our connection to animals, to the whole world in which we live. And it's a poem by Sandra Berry, and it's called Leave Taking. And when I was teaching, I used to end the class actually I'd give these out, and the students would read a paragraph of each of it, and we just spend time reading this through. And I should have done that for us. We could have rotated it through. But let me read it to you. It's called Leave Taking by Sandra Berry. When the coming of your death became an awareness on the planet, some wondrous events began. The word went out that you were preparing to leave this place you call home. The word was heard by the wind, and it promised to blow under you and push you. The clouds heard the wind and billowed for joy. You may land on us and float for a while. And the rain said, I'll wash the air clean, while each star polished itself to a brilliant shine. In the presence of your impending death, the earth prepared to send you forth. The gravity that has long held you so tightly began to loosen. It called, let loose, let loose, let loose and fly. And as you begin to float, a squirrel noticed and remembered how you saved those things that were important. And he told the rabbit, who told the turtle, who told the bird. She's coming, they whispered. The bird sang your memories a joyous release, and the song was heard by a lone wolf. And the lone wolf stood on the cold tundra, howling her appreciation of all the lessons you learned so well. Some distant great pines heard the howl and knew of your leaving, and they swayed and released their fragrance to waft you. and the fragrance was gathered in by the swiftest of hawks, flown high with the wisdom that great hawks know. And the hawk told the passing eagle, who swooped and soared until, finding your spirit loose on the wind, carried it forward to a joyous rainbow. And the rainbow said, "Come, I've been waiting. The colors are all for you." And when the moon heard this, it shouted, "Prepare, a life well lived is approaching." And the stars again polished their shine until the illumination penetrated the system, and your soul saw and knew that it was going home, home to the light, home to the sun, to home, beyond home, beyond home. And it met with all that has always known, the silent and brilliant mystery, the source. The entire mystery burst with the splendor of welcome. Welcome, we've been waiting. The source, with all the ancestors gathered around, enfolded you and danced your coming. While far away, in the world that you had known, a group of your loves and friends gathered to speak your praises, to sing your leaving, and to forever remember.
Wasn't that funny? Because as you were starting that, and I didn't realize you were going to go from the lowliness of the earth up to the expanse of the universe. But the words I had written down here were sort of mystery and connection to nature, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of what we've spoken about today, whether it be water or gulls or wolves or stones or rocks or uneven ground, it all thematically, oddly enough for me, I'm hearing, don't forget our connection to nature.
Mm-hmm. We're all connected.
And our connection to all things in nature. And we are part of nature. Mm-hmm. We sometimes think we're not. We forget that we are. We are of the nature, Julie.
We are of the nature.
We are of the nature.
You know, the 5 remembrances.
And it all comes back around, right, to that sense of not forgetting, but letting go of the fact that we are somehow the dominant thing on the earth. Mm-hmm. We are just another thing on the earth that's as important and sacred as every other thing on the earth.
Yeah.
But we give ourselves that status, I think, and it's sometimes nice to be reminded that we are connected to the wolf and the eagle and the rainbow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had my eyes closed as you were reading it, and what came up for me instantly was, and on it goes, right? Just that. And on it goes. Right. And then the other word just came was, it's all interconnected. Even when we can't see it and we don't know how it's happening or where or when or how, and it's a mystery, we're all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that's a beautiful note to end on. So may these words be of service and support to those who listen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to What Now? On the Threshold of Life, Death, and Grief. What Now is produced in partnership with Hospice Peterborough, dedicated to providing compassionate care and support to individuals and families facing life-limiting illness and loss. What Now is recorded at Thin Spaces Studio in Peterborough, Ontario. Special thanks to Paradise Garage for providing the music. Technical support is provided by Sean Heichert and audio engineering by Kevin Fleming. More episodes of What Now are available for free on most major podcast platforms. If you found value in our conversations, please support us by following, leaving a 5-star review, and sharing with your friends and loved ones. If you'd like to support the essential work of Hospice Peterborough, please consider visiting hospicepeterborough.org/donate. Your contribution helps us to continue to provide vital care and support. Until next time, may you find peace and comfort on your journey.